next panel session, and this one is all about, it's an issue that's come up, I think, in lots of the sessions that we've been in, is skills for the future. So we've been talking a lot about transforming services, innovating, creating that kind of more digitalized future. But what does that mean for the skills mix that we're going to need across the civil service and across the public sector? So we're going to be talking about all of that in this session. We've got a fantastic panel. In a moment, I will introduce our 5 speakers. I will ask them each to give some short opening remarks. And then, as I've been doing in all of the other panel sessions, I'm going to throw it open to you because this is your conference, so it's your opportunity to put all of your questions to our great speakers. I know I've been saying this, we have fantastic speakers at Innovation 2024, but this panel in particular is a fantastically global panel. So I'm really excited about this panel. So first we will hear from Thomas Beautyman, who is the Deputy Director at the Government Digital Capability at the Central Digital and Data Office in the Cabinet Office here in the UK. Then we will hear from Lauren Hunter, who is Director of Talent Policy and Platforms at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. So come all the way from Canada. Thanks, Lauren. Then we'll hear from Claire Hickey, who is the Chief Technology Officer for EMEA Workday, so one of our great knowledge partners for Innovation 2024. And then we've got, coming over from Spain, we've got Israel Pasta, who is the Director of the Learning Department of the National Institute of Public Administration in the Ministry of Finance and the Civil Service. We've had Israel on some of our other Global Government Forum events, so really looking forward to what you say today, Israel. And then last but by no means least, all the way from Estonia, we have Carl Andreas Sprenk, who is the Director for Digital Skills Coordination at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications. So as I say, we've got a great panel. Please do take this opportunity to put your questions to them once you've heard their opening remarks. So on that note, Thomas, over to you.
Stay in your lane. That's the message that I think many officials, public servants, the world over hear. We like, don't we, in government, to stick people in categories. It suits us. It's helpful for people who are trying to administrate these systems to stick people in buckets. But that can be hugely limiting. It stops people from thinking about what they're really capable of, what they can really achieve. Now imagine a different scenario, a different world, where actually your core skill set is not the thing that's going to limit you, but actually it's going to be the foundation. It's going to be the thing that you're able to build on. Many of the skills that we've got as civil servants, as public servants, those are being able to think critically, work with others, address really tricky problems, common across lots of different job families. Yet sometimes we limit our thinking. Some of the things that we've seen over the last probably 18 months, more so than any other time, such as generative AI, the use of low-code, no-code, has opened up opportunities for people. It starts to democratize, I suppose, access to skills, access to be in a position to deliver value. I think we're at a really pivotal point. We're at a pivotal point where, especially in government, we need to think how are people going to deliver value in different ways? How do we capitalize on the skills that we've already got? In UK government, we've done 3 very specific things over the course of the last 12 months. The first one is to think about our leaders. So we have 7,000 senior civil servants in the UK government. They are now all on a pathway to become confident and skilled in digital data. The next group we've thought about is our experts, our digital and data experts. And we've got a very clear, structured framework of their skills and competencies to help them develop. And then the third area is thinking about everybody else. In the UK, we've got 500,000 civil servants. Last year, we kicked off a project called One Big Thing, which is an initiative, quite a unique initiative, to get to get all of our civil servants, was the aspiration, to understand data a bit more. As of now, we've had about 220,000 civil servants in the UK that have done a day's worth of data learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. On that, in the room, I know I keep doing a show of hands, but be honest with me here, in the room, whatever profession you're in, do you understand AI? Put your hand up if you do. Great. I wouldn't have put my hand up, and I've been chairing this for 2 days. So really interesting, as you say. I think really interesting to hear what you say there, that I think some people still very much feel they are in their lane, very much in a siloed kind of lane. But really interesting what you hear in that AI. I think a lot of people are scared of AI in terms of what it might mean for them and the way they have to work. But you're saying there are huge opportunities as long as we can make sure that people get the training that they need. Thanks, Thomas. Great place to start. Lauren, coming to you.
So just picking up on what Tom just said, in the Government of Canada, we are really good at counting what is easy. And when it comes to recruitment and when it comes to our workforce, what we like to count are the boxes that people are in. So when we put up a job for an advertisement, we articulate what the experience is based on what the generic work description is for that job. And then when we look at the workforce, we are really good at answering the question, what types of jobs do we have in the Government of Canada? What is the vacancy rate of those jobs? And we are almost wholly incapable of answering the question, what are our people capable of? And what is that question, what is the capacity, what is the human capacity of our workforce? That's the question for the future. So I run a rogue, weird little team of developers and user interface designers and policy wonks, and we built a startup product inside government, which was basically a single massive interoperable repository of talent. And it's just been announced actually as the new recruitment platform for all the digital jobs in the Government of Canada. So we made it from startup through to proof of concept to all the way to now releasing at scale. And the purpose of this is basically to recalculate that conversation so that all the jobs now, rather than being biography based, you have to have done this for this many years in this way. Now it's all about, this is the impact that that job's going to have on the population. In order to deliver the impact, the person who does that role will need these key skills. And then we don't tell you how you have to get them. On our platform, you're able to come in either as an existing public servant, no matter what domain you work in, or as somebody from anywhere in the country, no matter your life path. And this was designed to advance employment equity, not in the way that we count, beans and numbers and set targets, but that organically, just by virtue of using it, there would be better experiences and there would be better employment equity outcomes. And we're seeing that in the data, which is really exciting. But you complete your narrative of how you have that skill. And we codified in iconography, in language. You can come to that skill by many different types of paths, by personal learning, by formal education, by community-based learning, by work experience, by recognition from your community or awards, or all these different types of things. And when managers see that experience now coming across, they say, this is a skill I have to assess. This is the narrative of experience against that skill this person has, and they have agency over how they tell their own story. And then various people come in and they provide evidence against those claims. And then that skill record moves through the system with that person. So as you become an employee, as you move jobs, as you move classifications, you want to go learn something on the side, we grow with you. You can keep building out your narrative. But what it means from a data and an organizational perspective is that we can now say, hey, Department of Defense, you need 150 cloud architects. You think you've only got 110. We know you have 170. We see the skills of the people because we don't say what jobs. They know how many people have those jobs right now, but we can say how many people have those skills. Or how many are using them in their current role? How many have learned them on the side? How many used them previously? How many are 2/3 of the way to getting that skill next? And that's a really different conversation. And that's the difference in government thinking about skills in terms of counting by numbers, which is how we always used to do it, to thinking about almost a learning platform, right? The way an AI or a platform economics perspective would be.
Lauren, thank you so much. It's interesting, we've already had stay in your lane and then putting people in a box. So we're getting this thing of people being really contained, I think, when it comes to skills. And actually, I really like what you say there, and measure what they're capable of, not just what job they're doing. And I always thought when I came into the civil service, you bring a CV with you when you come into the civil service. But once you're employed, nobody cares what was on your CV. And I think understanding that talent that we've got in the civil service through those different channels, really interesting what you're saying there. Thanks so much. Claire, over to you.
Excellent, thank you very much. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled to be here. I'm representing the Irish contingent on this global lineup here. I'm going to ask a different question. You just asked earlier how many people understand AI. I'd like to ask a different question. How many people use AI in their personal lives? And there we have it. Okay, so I'm here to represent Workday, but equally to really talk about skills and what it means in terms of that relation also from a technology perspective. Just to give some alignment here, Workday is an enterprise platform, and it's there to manage organizations' most important assets, and that, of course, is people and money. We've got AI built in at the core, and it's there so that we can elevate employees, that it really can supercharge work. And it's there to help organizations ensure that they can be far more productive and efficient. And this is what this evolution is come to. And it's really important that we start to embrace this. Now, going to skills, can I start with upskilling? So organizations have focused for a long time, and they continue to do that so that they can ensure that they're ready for the future. So upskilling becomes really important. But how can you make upskilling easier? It's a bit like, how can you make getting to work easier with Google? So in terms of AI being able to lean in here, AI is already in place to really help augment roles. It's not there ever to replace the human. And I think that's where this huge concern starts to be raised. Especially, we've seen this in the past 12 months or more. So it's really important that we see technology as not only augmenting how we work, and it's doing that, as I said, to be far more productive and efficient. And it's there so that then you really can concentrate on the important work. You're concentrating on your strategic objectives. You're concentrating on your careers. You're concentrating on your own development. And so it's also about taking it back to the basics. It's helping organizations to assess and to identify the skills gap. And I heard some of the end of the panel earlier, and I think Julia mentioned it, we talked about skills gap. AI can also look to where skills gap are, both at an employee level, but also at an organizational level. LinkedIn did a research lately, is workforce research, and they presented some results, which I found fascinating. They said that 25% of skills in our own jobs today have already changed, 25% since 2015. And they're looking that the trajectory of that is that that's going to double by 2027. Other organizations are actually presenting far higher numbers. But what's important here is how we start to embrace AI, both to augment that productivity, augment our efficiency, and help us in our lives. Because you nearly all showed your hands, and it's how AI is actually helping you already be productive in your personal lives. And so what we're looking at is how can that also really help enable you within organizations, within your own job role. AI can lean into what your career path starts to look like. It starts to look at those skills gaps, to look at your development. And it's helping organizations. They talk about looking into the future. I agree. I think that like after COVID, we kind of all said we're already in the future to some degree. But I think it's really interesting because there's some level of being able to identify what organizations and yourselves as employee needs for job roles. And you can only do that with the enablement of AI because it's a far more efficient way of starting to look at what that trajectory, what that path, and what that opportunity brings to us both in our personal lives and in the workplace.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Claire. I like the way you started with you help organisations look at their most important assets and you put people before money, which I thought was really telling. But also, I think, as we said, Thomas, as we were saying, some people are scared of AI. I think lots of people are scared of AI. But what you're saying, Claire, like Thomas, is there are huge opportunities if we can use this technology both to help you individually in terms of your own career. And I like the way you put it, that it will augment, not replace people, free you up to do some of that really important work. But then also it can be used to help organisations do the type of mapping that Lauren was talking about, map the skills and the talent across organisations. Thanks so much, Claire. Israel, coming to you.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me? I think presentation is over there.
I don't know if, can we hear
The mic is
Israel?
on.
Can you hear me?
No.
No,
No?
I don't
No?
think that mic is working. If not, we'll get you the handheld mic. I think it's just coming. There we go. Going to bring it up for you, Israel, because I don't think that one's working.
Oh, wait patiently. Oh. Now, more gadgets. I've got everything now.
Technology, there you go.
I'm going to show you how skilled I am with gadgets now. But, well, thank you for having me. It's such a challenge for me to explain in 4 minutes everything I would like to say to you, coming from a very different model than that in the UK, which brings also the challenge not only in the translation into English of what I would like to say to you, but the institutional translation, which sometimes makes it trickier. But the thing is, different models, okay, but we come to this common ground sometimes, and this is what I've seen in the last couple of days and today. But anyways, I come from the Ministry of Digital Transformation and of the Civil Service, which is a new thing 2 months ago. This new political term brought the opportunity to bring a reformist drive. And the Center for, well, the School of Government, the Instituto Nacional de Administración Pública, I represent here today, is right in the center of this transformation. And how do we do this? We developed the first ever learning strategy with the intention of taking the initiative in the development of skills, not just waiting for the future to come and see what we do with that, especially in technology. And this is why we defined, and we're not waiting for the wave to come over us, so we defined the first ever strategy, as I said, including an ecosystem of competencies. So we had some frameworks, because we work with competencies across government in managerial skills mainly, but of course that not only digital, you can see one over there. So we created this concept in order to put everything together and give it a coherence towards the civil service model that wants to be evolved, not revolutionized, but evolved. And in that regard, we are very drawn to the UK functional models, the functions and professions. So that is the way forward we are envisioning now. And we think that organizing skills in this kind of ecosystem or other you might have is helping professionals to move from model A, that it would be the traditional, organized by core, very legal approach one, to a competence-based one, describing functions and standards. So maybe by me saying this, you realize how your model is important in that regard. And we take into account your experience, and we would like to get the idea of having the role of learning in government, not only the training that you passively wait for to be awarded. Probably you do a course and off you go. No, it's the learning approach to the way we work. That we want to instill in the civil service in Spain. That's the learning strategy. That's the new law that's been passed just a couple of months ago that grants us, or even asks us to do that, which is great responsibility, but a privilege to be able to improve what we do from the learning policy or the training policy, if you want. And again, the commonality we want to stress across ministries and other administration from the INAP would be to stress the fact that there is this public service calling that is the only way forward to address the needs of citizens, not just our own needs as individuals working in government. So at the end of the day, this is a big cultural shift that the training policy, and of course the digital competency is one of the main ones we're talking about here these days, is going to help us bring forward. So I hope that the message is conveyed, and I really look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Israel, thank you so much. It's really interesting what you say there, because in one of the sessions yesterday, somebody did a challenge from the floor and said, we don't give ourselves enough credit in the UK. And I think what you've said there really, I think sometimes we forget that actually in some areas, we are leading the way and we can be a good example for other countries. And I like what you said there about learning more important than knowing. For those of you who don't understand the Spanish system, I think I'm right, Israel, in saying that to join the civil service, in particular to get into the senior civil service, you have to pass tests on kind of understanding all the legislation, and it's what you know, rather than a kind of competency-based problem solving that we have that more approach in the UK. So it's interesting to hear how Spain are moving more towards the kind of UK approach. And that need for a cultural shift, and as you say, which I think will come out in the conversation, really having that public service ethos at the heart of what we do and the training that we do. Thanks so much, Israel. And now, Carl, over to you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this kind invitation as well. It's great to be here and share some thoughts. I'm coming from Estonia's ministry, which is not a single digital ministry, but rather supporting other ministries to make their digital transformation happen. And let me start by saying that the way how citizens perceive the services provided by the government is quite heavily dependent on the service models which they have seen from the private sector part. So for this reason, I think it's in a way inevitable that sooner or later the government sector must also adjust to so-called new paradigm of service delivery. And following our digital agenda, by year 2030, we aim to deliver the best digital government experience for our citizens, which might sound like a really slogan-like or overly ambitious target, but by means we prioritize the quality and human centricity of public services as the next level of maturity in digital government. And what you can see on this slide is a short overview about the personal government concept, which was introduced approximately a month ago to broader public. And in short, the concept is explained on a metaphor of a tree. So what should be visible for citizen are everything above the ground. So your opportunities, such as the services you're eligible for, or some kind of allowances which you're eligible for from the government. Then your obligations, the things you have to provide for the government, such as taxes. And then overview about your data, because as a citizen, you are the owner of your data and you should be aware how it's used by the state. So it's a purpose for transparency reason. And the way how those branches can function and grow is on below the ground. So different platforms, the registries, the legislative base, which are not relevant for the end user, who seeks for convenient, trustworthy, and accessible service experience. But while improving the quality of public services, we also have a great challenge also to increase the efficiency of our public administration, to improve our internal procedures or routines. So everything, once again, below the ground. And that leads me to skills and competencies of our civil servants, because we can witness a great commitment from our HR and training departments all across the government sector to upskill our civil servants in the respective area, to equip them with necessary digital skills. Although there is still a question that which kind of digital skills are we speaking about? What is the bare minimum, the essential that every civil servant, despite their respective area or position they're holding, they should have in order to function in this new digital government era? And I think it's not precisely the question of concrete skills, but rather changing the mindset. So to better understand why we need to adopt new technologies, or why we need to adopt agile working methods in the government sector, or how good quality data can improve our decisions when functioning as civil servants. And that is probably even more challenging to address than actually teaching skills to people. So, speaking of how to address these challenges, we have national long-term strategies which address and aim to close the digital skills gap in society in general. We already have good practices, such as upskilling programs for our civil servants. We have a digital academy e-learning platform, which we're providing for all. We are also having dedicated training programs. And just to provide you an example, in recent years, approximately 80% of our top executives have undergone a program which equipped them with technological management theory and also practical skills they can use in their organization in order to go through the digital transformation. And as an impact, we can already witness that we see stronger ICT planning and more strategic approach to that. So we can see a shift from a project-driven approach to more like holistic perspective and so on. But what we currently miss is some kind of middle layer, so-called government's people development plan, which would have a shared consensus how we are strategically addressing the training across the government sector to improve and maintain the quality of our civil servants in this digital government era. And as I began my introduction from the user-centric perspective, then it's also one of the aims we have set ourselves, that we would like to deliver this plan from the learner's perspective, to understand that what are the motivations of the civil servant to acquire those skills, and what are perhaps the needs they feel that they should acquire the skills. So just to conclude, I think also considering the nature of technology, which is constantly evolving, then it's not a sprint, it's not a one-time thing. We have to prepare for the marathon. So it might be constant to keep up your motivation to acquire new skills and stay in a way digitally fit.
Brilliant, thank you. And that constant learning, I think, picks up on what Israel was saying about learning more, being more important than knowing. So it's not a one-off thing and then you're done. Some really key issues there, I think, that you included in your opening remarks. So what is the absolute bare minimum in terms of digital literacy that we want across all of our civil servants and public servants? And then again, you also talking about all of this has to come back to the ultimate aim is to provide better services to the public and keeping that in mind. And all of you mentioned kind of the different channels. So you set out there digital academy, e-learning, but I've got, welcome people's thoughts on what's the best channel for people in the room in terms of when they're looking to upskill. Thank you to all of you. Great way to set off this scene for our conversation. I will be coming to the audience in just a moment, but one thought struck me as you were all talking there, and I want to put it to you, and you can all answer this if you like, but a thing that has come up in a lot of the sessions is that with these new technologies and with AI, for example, a lot of the kind of repetitive work will be taken up by AI. Kind of we won't, as civil servants, have to do that anymore. But what we're missing quite a lot are the other skills, good communication, good collaboration, good leadership skills. Is there a danger that in so much focus on technology skills and upskilling people on the technology side of things, we're missing a trick when it comes to actually some of the skills we're going to need even more in future because robots will be doing everything else, are those really classic human and classic civil service skills? Thomas, I'm going to come to you on that question.
I think there is a danger. Yes. So in order to take full advantage of all the opportunities that digital transformation can bring, we genuinely need people, we need experts with some expert skills. Implementing AI in an effective and a safe way does require us to have more specialist skills. However, it's a very small fraction, I think, of our overall workforce. There's a choice that governments face, and the choice will be how to recycle, how to redeploy, how to make best use of the people they've currently got. In a private organisation, there's opportunities to retarget people to drive greater revenue and new markets. In government, there's an opportunity to have better conversations with citizens. There's an opportunity potentially to drive much better services. There's also, to be candid, there is also an opportunity for us to reduce the overall cost of our workforce. So I think that we have to be able to shift the conversation to how do we help people be ready to take that next step. And as you alluded to in your question, it absolutely comes down to those core communication skills for me. Being able to solve complex problems, being able to have really good conversations so that you can understand your claimant's need, the need of the person requesting a passport or a visa. Whatever your field, there is an opportunity for us to think carefully about what are those core human skills we've got, because that is where we're going to be able to have the greatest value in future.
Thanks, Thomas. Lauren.
You mentioned missing the trick. And I think the trick we miss globally is that the human being's ability to exercise agency and to be adaptive will, in almost all cases, outpace a government's ability to articulate what it needs. So when a government shows up and says, we need a bunch of people to do these types of jobs, and we're worried about upskilling too many tech people, and then AI comes in and we don't need them anymore. What we're seeing humans in that way is basically things that fill a need, and we're really focused on the need. When we build systems, particularly like when we talk about skills and we build human talent capacity systems, a person who can rapidly learn Java and then code in React and do it quickly, and then an AI comes in, we don't need any more React devs anymore. Thanks very much for coming out. If we have a system that says you learned it quickly, so you've got mad wicked ability to learn, oh wow, your analytical thinking is really strong. Hey, you worked with 6 other people and you helped mentor, okay, tick, tick. So when we see not just how do you fill a box, but how do you, the totality of your skills, your technical and your behavioral, how do you articulate those, and we see you as a human, I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, thanks. I am going to come to all three of you on this one, and then I will shake up the order a little bit because we'll be coming to the audience. Claire, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, one of the most important people skills that AI, at least from a Workday perspective and for most organizations, will never replace is decision making. And it's interesting, the way that I asked the question earlier, how many people are using AI in their personal lives? Well, you're not letting any level of AI for any of the apps that you use on a daily basis make those decisions for you. You get suggestions and you're getting recommendations and you're deciding whether you take those decisions and those suggestions and those recommendations. The same is said in business. So from an AI perspective, it can take a huge load away from those repetitive tasks. But in all honesty, it's the repetitive tasks we don't want to be doing. So it gives this lever, one, for us to be in control, not replace the human as I talk about, and allow workers and employees to be able to continue to make those key decisions and still be able to have the power to be able to do so. But what it also does is it brings room, it gives us the advantage point of building out the skills, such as what we talk about, communication, influencing, inspiring, and really being able to generate into those strategic objectives that we all have to deliver on. It gives room to be able to do that. And what's important for organizations is to be able to identify what that is and have that. AI can't have the conversation to say, what do you want from your career? AI will certainly help in terms of what skills and the skills gap and possibly where the capability is, and it will start closing that down for organizations. But it's very important that equally that AI helps us to manage our own careers, but it helps organizations and tells them what they really need from a role perspective for what they need their employees to be able to achieve.
Thanks, Claire. Israel and then Carl.
Yes, regarding your question, as I see it, it could lead us to the conversation about hard skills and soft skills. Of course, digital skills fall mainly on the hard skills area. And we have tackled that with the digital framework that we adapted specifically for the civil service, which is, thinking about how public services and public organizations are working effectively and how to improve that. Okay, but what about the soft skills? In this regard, I would stress one out of the menu, if you want, the ecosystem I talked about before, which would be learn to learn, which is the key that opens every door for anything the government or anyone at all may need in the future. So if you learn to learn, you adapt quickly to whatever change that may come. call it AI, but because in fact, automation is already there. We don't print ourselves like we used to do in the 19th century, I don't know. But things start to evolve without us realizing sometimes. But if you learn to adapt, if you want to be active in improving your competencies, your skills, that's the key for whatever future holds.
And conferences like this are all part of learning to learn as well, aren't they? Carl, final thoughts on that?
Yeah,
My question.
I can really agree on what you just said about learning to learn, because also about, when I was saying before, the technology demands us to be constantly fit and learn by doing, and then also on a go. Then I think also it goes for another fields similarly. So the lifelong learning challenge is quite great, because nowadays we can't only rely that we graduate some degree and then afterwards we can work 20 or 30 years without acquiring any new skills or knowledge. So, but it's also changing the mindset that I would like to underline our experience with this Digital Skills Academy, which we made available. So it's 100% e-learning, and we showed how good e-learning can look like, because previously it was just really text-based or video-based courses, but by integrating different mediums, we also created a learner's experience. And now we can see that in other policy fields, also the ministers are looking for us. So how did you do this? And can we do it also for our civil servants available? So we can acquire new skills in the real life work situations, not just to prepare for the future, but when we are meeting some kind of challenges and we have to come over it. And also really agree on the soft skill part, because when we had this discussion about AI, it's also about critical thinking and assessing that whether the information this model is providing me is relevant or not. So it has to go hand in hand, the soft skills and also this technical skills.
Yeah, interesting how many people said they're using AI, so you're learning while you're using it how you actually interrogate AI as well in the best possible way. Right, over to the audience. Questions? Yes, we've got a lady down here at the front, and then I will come to the gentleman at the front, and then I'll come back there. So I've seen another hand there, and then I'll look over here to make sure we're getting everybody in.
Hi all, thank you. That was really interesting. I think a personal reflection is how AI and general technology is cross-cutting across all the different industries that we have. So there's an opportunity for everybody to upskill. I'm going to cheekily ask a two-pronged question, if that's okay.
You've got 20 seconds.
That's okay. I'll try and speak quickly. So the first part is you talked about staying in your lane, and it made me dance a little bit in my mind, because actually within UK government we've got this tendency of boxing people, and there's this element of jack of all trades but a master of none. But actually the saying then says but it's better to be a master of many, right? Or something like that, paraphrasing. So how do we ensure that we're breaking out of that box as UK government or government in generally? And then the second part of my question is generally around people and working cultures. So I think where we're going in terms of future workforce planning, the priorities of our workforce are changing drastically from the traditional expectations within the civil service, for example, to more things around well-being, diversity, inclusion, flexible working. How do we keep up as a civil service on those expectations as well?
Thank you so much. So, Thomas, I'm going to ask you about staying in the lane. How do people break out of those silos, but also become expert in areas? That's quite a tricky balance, I think. And then I'll ask anybody who wants to answer the second part of the question on kind of well-being and how we factor that in as well.
I'm not going to attempt to give advice to an individual on how you break out lane. I think this is an organizational problem. I think there's three answers to this. The first thing is we start small. We identify where it's working, small groups of people who are curious and excited and genuinely want to make a change. It's probably people in this group here that have self-selected to be part of this story. Find those and then build them out where possible. The next thing is make the case, and make the case again. A lot of the work that we do in Cabinet Office is stakeholder management, it's lobbying, it's telling ministers once, twice, 3 times. And it's bringing together lots of different stakeholders that need to understand the nuts and bolts of the business case, and that it makes business sense. It makes sense to use taxpayer money in the best way possible. So playing those arguments over and over again till frankly it gets boring is a really, really important part of it. And then I think that the third one is make sure there is a collective intent to take action. So one of the things that we did in Cabinet Office in Central Digital Data Office last year was publish a strategy. The strategy was issued in June of last year, sorry, the year before, and it was ultimately signed by all permanent secretaries and all CDIOs across government. It set out 21 commitments. Those commitments included, I think at that stage, about 5 or 6 that related very specifically to capability, to personal growth, to having the skills that we need. That allows us to hold people to account, right, and keep them on the hook and remind them and show them a little red, amber, green league table of where they're doing well, where they're not doing well. It's hard and people feel uncomfortable about it, but having that collective intent and then moving people on that agenda is the choices that we made.
Thanks. I'm conscious of the time. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. So, Lauren, actually, okay.
I think
Israel, if
Israel.
you come in on the well-being point.
Yeah,
and then
I just wanted to recommend a book which is called Range. I just read it by David Epstein, who advocates for journalists. And there you can find the argument about hyphen type professionals and T type, maybe instead of a I type, it's too specialist. I'll leave it there.
Brilliant. Thank you. There we go. We've got another question here, and then there was, after you, if you put your hand, there was that lady afterwards, if that's okay. Thanks.
So I think the last couple of days have made it really clear that there's a real appetite for engaging with the future and upskilling. But I think there's an opportunity that's being missed, and I think it hangs around the word future. I think we're all using the word future to define the new and the sexy and the, what's coming up on the horizon. But there's another future that we've got to deal with, which is the things that have come before us and things like legacy tech debt, that sort of thing. I wonder if, we've got a global panel, if we can speak to how we can innovate on upskilling some of our new and upcoming workforce to continue to manage some of that legacy where, we do not move quickly as governments and civil servants. We are going to have an aging workforce that is going to depart our ranks before we can replace those systems in place. And I think
That's a really good question. So how do we make sure as we bring new people in, they have the skills to actually deal with some of the existing problems and that we're not just focusing on the future? Who would like to go for that one? Claire, have you got thoughts?
I think it's really interesting because so you've already identified a need, right? And it's not a need that's necessarily been brought up, as you said, in the past couple of days, which is around managing legacy. Now, when you start to, and I'm going to go back to that skills identification piece, as an organisation, if that's a key skill and requirement that remains within your organisation, then you've already need to map it. So it's already part of what you're looking for within your job role. And so therefore, it's almost identifying either the right from the internal pool as to that they continue to manage for whatever skill set you need to manage your technical debt, and also if you need to be able to attract from an external perspective. But I think it's really interesting because this goes back to finding the skills gap. And if this is a skills gap that you see because you feel, from a transformation perspective, organizations are trying to be in the future and you're trying to manage part of the past, then that just needs to be identified as part of that skill set requirement that you need to fulfill on various roles.
And I think what you're saying is the risk is we're not identifying that need. We're kind of leapfrogging it and focusing on things that we know are coming down the future, but not maybe getting the foundations in place. Lauren, I know you wanted to come in on that as well.
Yeah, for us in the digital government in Canada, it's now a market question. Yeah. COBOL is one of the skills on our platform, and when we run short, up until we launched, the option was to go to very expensive consultants who would charge government 3 times the amount because they have people to work in legacy systems. But one of the things we're actually looking at is, should we start throwing up flights of jobs for COBOL for some of these older systems? And I know there are devs out there who are just going to say, challenge accepted. But we're not putting them in a place where they're learning an outdated coding language and then putting them on a path to a dead-end job. We're saying, hey, you had these skills, you learned those skills. We also give you a credit behavioral for ability to learn. Now you're gonna get some mentoring, and by the way, now you're inside and you can upskill over here. So it's we shouldn't be thinking of it as the future and the legacy. It's all just a living, breathing ecosystem of data systems and human systems that work together. Our ability to articulate this, though, is where AI can help, but we also can't outsource the logic of that. We have to be able to make good decisions about what we need, the ethical decisions. So straight up, it's a market question. You make something popular, someone will take that job. Just don't leave them at the end of the line.
Thanks, Lauren. We had a question there, and I might have overpromised, but if I don't think there was any desperate hands up here, because I think this might be the last question. Okay, it'll have to be a really quick one. Okay, so question here.
Hi, LNOD at Ofgem. We are getting more and more queries every week recently on AI upskilling and building the new capability at the organization. And the question is, how do we approach that on an organizational level in a more strategic approach, that we still retain the right talent, but we do build the new capability on the AI upskilling?
Okay, so how do you upskill on AI across an organization? Who would like to come in on that one? Thomas, I mean, this is what you're doing.
Yeah,
and then we'll take this question here, if that's all right. That'll be the final question.
So I can explain how we're tackling the problem. So two things. Firstly, defining what those skills are that we need and where they might sit. So our conclusion is it's not the case that we need a whole new raft of an AI specialist role. There is indeed a role for that, but actually where the real capacity is needed is helping those individuals already in a data science role, in a DevOps role, in a software engineering role, to have, I suppose, maybe that additional bit of insight that they might need to play a role in that space. In many cases, many of our engineers are already working heavily with AI. There is a different level of expectation now, though, about the capacity and what they bring out. And then that, once we've defined what are the very specific skills, we can then think really carefully about how do we build that capacity. Finding it from the market at the moment is very, very difficult. So one of the things that we're looking to do internally within UK government is figure out how do we take those high-performing individuals already in some of our core roles and give them the opportunity to grow into those roles.
Thank you. Challenge. We've got 1 minute left for the question and the answers. So over to you for the final question.
Okay, one of the earlier sessions talked about the workforce fundamental, a next generation of work.
Oh.
That's it.
Sorry, it just died. Talked about the next generation of workforce coming through, having a fundamentally different relationship with information and services to what this group of people do here. So I guess bringing it around to the very first question, what additional challenges or risks do you foresee with having that generation of workforce stepping to the civil service and making decisions with technology, artificial intelligence, and so on? So in essence, that generation have gone to being consumers of information rather than maybe that learn how to learn culture that was mentioned before.
Interesting. So are there risks around a very tech-savvy generation coming in, but who maybe aren't asking some of the questions, I think, that we would like them to? They're not learning to learn. The tech's giving it to them.
Yeah, I can take that really quickly. I tell you what's really important here is that all employees and workers within your organizations have the same experience. So you are going to have a younger generation come in that we all know and we kind of laugh about to some degree, and say, oh, you know, they're bored with the mobile phone in their hands and whatever. That's all be true. You mentioned something, Lauren, really interesting earlier about the human being. The human being has got this massive ability to evolve. Huge. We evolve day in, day out in everything that we do. And if you look back at all these generational jobs for the past century, and you look at how we've all taken on AI in our personal jobs and we're taking it on our work lives, I think that it's really important that actually from a worker perspective, an employee perspective, that actually you provide this level of engagement and experience. And the other thing what becomes really important, we get asked a lot about this, it's what's the benefit to you. So the resistance comes when an employee doesn't see where the benefit is. And so what's really important is that they understand from organizations what's the benefit to them when they're using and driving through technology. And this is where it becomes important.